Hi, welcome to part 2 of the video series of playing live with Ableton Live. Going to keep this video pretty short, this part. Just going to go through the rest of the gear. I've already done a quick tour of the gear at the end of the last video. Just going to talk a little bit about the connections and how everything sort of now fits together. Basically, anything that's connected and needs to talk to Ableton via USB. Once you plug it in, it will show up in here in your MIDI preferences, and everything apart from the TR8 I've got set up to have track is on and remote on with sync off, but I've got the sync on the TR8 as I explained in the previous video. And there's a couple of bits here I'm not using, but just ignore those for now. So I say track on, remote on, everything else off. You should be good to go. So I'm just going to start down here with the MiniNova. I don't actually use this for playing live connected up with Ableton. I do sometimes use it from a production point of view. You can connect it up via USB, just got to download the drivers from the Novation website, and then Ableton will send MIDI to this, and you can trigger the sounds from this from a MIDI clip within Ableton. If you use the external instrument device within Ableton, that works pretty well. But from a live point of view, the only thing I'd like this to do is to be able to play an arpeggiator pattern on here that's going to stay in time with everything else. So I do that by synchronizing this with the Roland gear via MIDI. If you remember from the previous video, we'd got the MIDI out going from the TR8 to MIDI in on the TB3 so that they're synchronized together. What I've then got is MIDI out. These are standard MIDI cables, not USB, the standard 5-pin cables. So I've got MIDI out from the TB3 going to MIDI in on the MiniNova. So if I get a pattern playing on the Roland gear and then launch the arpeggiator on here, it'll all stay nice and in time. I can keep my hands free, then I don't need to worry about keeping anything in time, and I can mess around with the sounds a little bit. So give you a quick demo. Okay, so all nice and in time, and if I change the tempo on the TB8, the TR8, it's going to change the tempo on the MiniNova as well. So all synchronizes up nicely, great from a live point of view. You can just jam away with that actually without worrying about anything on your computer or anything else going wrong. So we've then got next to the MPK Mini. I just use this for a few drum sounds. There's one track I play live where I have these few sounds. And all I've got on here is a track, which you can see I've named MPK Drum. And on there, I've just got the basic 808 kit that comes with Ableton Live. And then these pads, all I've done is I've not changed any of the mappings on the MPK Mini. This is just the standard notes that they generate. And I've just put the sounds that I want on each of those pads. And obviously, you can move those around however you want them. Again, pretty simple. Works quite nicely for that. I'm just going to switch cameras now. I'm going to go to a different camera just to look at the other gear over the other side, and I'll talk through the rest of that, so I'll see you in a second. Okay, so for the gear over this side, we don't really need to see the screen on Ableton, so I'm just going to go full screen on the camera. I'm going to start off with the Roland drum pads. These are connected to the laptop and into Ableton via a USB MIDI interface. So this has the standard, you can see just there, standard MIDI 5-pin MIDI cables in and out to a USB cable going into the laptop. That's because on one of the tracks I use the SPDS to actually trigger an instrument within Ableton. This kind of sound like that, which I'm going to go through that track later, and I'll show you how I set all of that up. But that's why I've got that connected up by USB. I also use it for normal drum sounds, and some of these, if you can hear those, and a few of those sounds are actually the sounds I used in the original songs when I wrote the song. So very easy, just take that sample, export it as a WAV file, stick it on the memory card onto the SPDS, and you've got the original drum sounds for your productions, which works really, really well. So nothing special going off really with the Launchkey and the Push. They are just both connected via USB. The connections as I showed before. I do like to run both of those off the mains power as well. From the Push's point of view, you get a much brighter display when you run it off the mains. You don't have to, but it does look better, particularly in a dark environment. And I tend to find that the Launchkey works better if you've got it plugged into the mains as well as USB. Again, you can run it just off USB, but it can be a little bit temperamental. And so the Launchkey, I'm just using, I've got a piano sound set up on there at the moment. And that will be used to trigger different sounds during a live set. And as I mentioned in the previous video, I've also got the option to launch clips from here, and also use this dial here for a filter. And then I mentioned previously I use in the previous video when I went through launching clips as well. I used the Touchable 3 app on an iPad. And what I do with that is I use this. I set up a basic wireless network. I use this, if I can focus on that. It's a virtual router manager, a free piece of software that basically will set up your own little wireless network. So you can connect then to that as a Wi-Fi network from your iPad to your computer, and they will connect and talk to each other. That way you aren't reliant on Wi-Fi. If you're going to play a gig somewhere that there's no Wi-Fi or a poor Wi-Fi connection, and you need Wi-Fi to connect Touchable to your iPad, sorry, Touchable to your laptop, you're going to be in problems with that. You can do it by USB now, but I've got enough USB stuff going off, so I like to do that wirelessly, and it works really, really well. So finally, just sort of routing the audio. How do we get all of this? We've got everything, you know, connected together, and it's playing nicely in Ableton, but obviously we need to hear something. So, as I mentioned previously, the TR8 is the sound card. So basically, all the audio that's coming out of the laptop is going to be routed out of the TR8. So I've got an audio, I've just got on mono at the moment, so it's coming out the left side on the mono, just a standard jack cable, which is coming out of there, going into the Mini K oscillator, the Mini KP2, because I want to be able to apply those effects to anything that comes out of Ableton. So that's the audio going into there. We've then got the audio coming out of there into this little mixer, going into channel 1 there. The Mini K oscillator, which we showed in the last video, is a separate output. That's not, again, that's not connected to Ableton at all. So I've got the audio from that going into, actually it's going to the auxiliary in on here. I've then got the audio from the SPDS, again a standard audio output from here, going into a channel on the mixer as well. And I've also, actually, for ease of connections, I've got the audio from the MiniNova goes to the input of the SPDS and kind of routes through there. So I can get both of those going into one input there on the mixer, because this is a little bit limited in terms of inputs and outputs. So that's basically how I operate all that. Then you've got headphone output if you want to for monitoring yourself, and then I've basically got the main outputs going to the monitors over there. So that's basically how everything kind of fits together and sets up and hopefully works, which it does most of the time. So thanks for watching. Join me on the next video, where I'm going to basically start with a completely blank project, and we're going to start building up our live set and start with the first track on that. Thanks for watching. See you later.